Born with the appearance of a wolf cub, Hughes was the royal family's once-in-millennium werewolf incarnation, and the greatest threat to the crown prince's ascension. So the crown prince staged a coup and seized the throne. Bound by a legend that forbade him from killing another royal, the new emperor imprisoned Hughes, torturing him daily for 10 years before sending him to a nest of madmen to fend for himself. Watching the lavish carriage pull up to the gate, Elena ignored her two provocative siblings and walked straight back to her room. In this family of villains, 7 children fought to the death for status. After her first, second, third, and sixth siblings died one after another, their cold-blooded father not only mocked their incompetence, but also cruelly ordered the remaining children to cast aside all emotion. With her knowledge of the story's plot, she had already devised a plan. What did she care if the family was wiped out? All she needed to do was nothing. She would stick close to the male lead without drawing any attention, and when the time was right, she would quietly escape. Not long after falling asleep, she heard Hughes's voice outside. Suddenly realizing her door wasn't fully closed, Elena quickly covered her mouth. She didn't want to meet the male lead this soon, unless it was absolutely necessary. She waited until the footsteps faded away, then tiptoed to the door. Just as she was about to close it, the door was suddenly pulled open. Elena lost her balance and stumbled forward, falling right into Hughes's arms. The two little kids stared at each other. Well, there goes my brilliant plan, she thought. But looking at him up close, she had to admit he was exactly her type. The original novel mentioned that he had killed dozens of fiancés with that very face before becoming a bloodthirsty monster. Elena immediately put on a pitiful act and apologized, preparing to retreat to her room. But Hughes grabbed her hand and wouldn't let go. "You're very pretty." His words were complimentary, but his face was completely expressionless. Hughes instantly recognized her as the youngest daughter of the Rod family, because of her black hair and golden eyes. He tilted his head, his gaze sweeping over the room behind her. There was no soft pink bed, no jewel-encrusted toys. It was clear her status in the Duke's mansion was low. In truth, Elena once had a princess-like room, but now all of those things belonged to her sister Courtney. She didn't mind, though. She preferred her current attic room. Here, to gain power, you had to prove your worth to the Duke. When she came back to her senses, she found Hughes still staring at her. She answers questions clearly enough. Her mind seems to be working fine. "Looks like you're useless," he said, turning to leave. The most precious treasure of the Rod family was their golden eyes, and Elena's were purer than anyone's. But compared to the nigh-invincible Duke, she seemed weak and timid, making her utterly worthless to him. Soon after, the Duke called a family meeting. "I will be tutoring His Highness, so he will be educated here alongside you." Her siblings scrambled to offer their blessings, making the atmosphere suffocating. Hughes, however, remained perfectly calm. Elena was stunned. Her jewel-like golden eyes could see the emotions of others, but she couldn't detect a single flicker of emotion from him. The Duke, in his usual arrogant fashion, immediately warned the prince to behave. Faced with such a power play, Hughes remained unfazed and gave a flawless response. Bored, the Duke prepared to leave. As he passed his youngest daughter, his brow furrowed. Useless thing. Elena clutched the hem of her dress, silently telling herself it was okay. The moment the Duke was gone, Courtney strutted over to Hughes to provoke him. Everyone wanted to step on the helpless prince. Elena was sure Hughes wouldn't let her get away with it. As curious as she was to see what would happen, getting caught in the crossfire would be a disaster. The smart move was to slip away. But as she turned to leave, she realized Hughes was following right behind her. Hearing the footsteps, Elena looked back. Why was he following her? Her departure had clearly annoyed her sister, who was now being ignored. Hughes suddenly grabbed Elena's arm and stood there silently. Elena glanced back at her sister and saw that Courtney was bathed in a red glow, the color of pure rage. She quickly looked away. Courtney pointed at the trembling Elena and sneered. "So you're trying to win him over to your side. You've decided to make an enemy of me, is that it?" Her fifth brother chimed in, mocking the stupid parasite. "If father hadn't ordered us not to touch her, we would have gouged out those golden eyes long ago." The words triggered a terrible memory for Elena. Her father had once said the same thing to her, and now, whenever she heard it, she instinctively shut her eyes. Seeing the girl's helplessness, Hughes remained silent for a long moment. It wasn't until Courtney brazenly used his first name that a gray aura, the color of annoyance, began to radiate from him. "Who gave you permission to address me so informally?" "Even the Duke asked for my consent before changing how he addresses me." Her usually domineering sister was rendered speechless. Any misstep in her reply could be twisted into an insult against their father. It was the first time Elena had seen Courtney so utterly flustered. She couldn't bear to watch. Afterward, Hughes dragged Elena away. She had no idea why, but at least she was safe. Once they were out of the room, they both relaxed. Elena let out a sigh of relief. She needed to get back to her attic before that crazy pair came after her. But the boy followed her the entire way. This was driving her insane. At first, she thought it was her imagination, but he'd been following her for 20 minutes. It was ridiculous. Why would he come to such a rundown place? She couldn't possibly bring him to her room, could she? Elena finally worked up the courage to ask, "Why are you following me?" Seeing the boy flinch, she repeated, "If you keep going this way, you'll end up at my attic room." "I know." Elena stomped her foot in frustration. Suddenly, a white light flickered around Hughes. It was the color of happiness. He looked completely expressionless, but inside he was laughing. Elena turned and fled, only to find Hughes chasing after her. She stopped, panting, and demanded, "Didn't you say you weren't following me?" Hughes grabbed the doorknob of the room next to hers. "I never said I was following you." The misunderstanding made Elena's face flush. Seeing her frozen in place, Hughes asked, "Is there anything else?" Elena's face turned beet red. She mumbled goodnight and bolted into her room. After the door slammed shut, Hughes whispered to himself, "You too." Meanwhile, Elena buried her face in her pillow, tossing and turning. It was so embarrassing. And her father was unbelievable. She was his daughter. How could he let a strange boy live in the room right next to hers? Then again, if her father actually cared about her, that would be truly terrifying. He had always silently approved of the bullying she endured from her siblings. She remembered that when she was born, her father had treated her differently. But even then, Elena knew that the notoriously cruel and cold-blooded Duke could never smile so kindly. The man had murmured the word perfect, named her Elena, and thoughtfully instructed the maids to take good care of her. The Duke in the novel was incredibly strict with his children, so why was he making a special exception for her? What she thought was a heartwarming story about a tyrant father being changed by his daughter turned out to be a cold calculation from the very first glance. In the past, her father had always been surrounded by a white aura, but that day it had turned into a suffocating black. Elena instinctively tried to run, but before she could react, a large hand closed around her throat. As she lost consciousness, she faintly heard him say, "If you were truly born with the Rod family's golden eyes, you should have known to stay away." After that, her father tested her abilities time and time again. The book never mentioned any of this. So as she faced one threat after another, Elena kept a bright smile on her face, too afraid to admit that the father who had once seemed to love her was really this kind of person. Only now did she understand the Duke had never seen her as a daughter. He only cherished her golden eyes. In the end, she was cast aside as a failure. Elena told herself to just endure it a little longer. Hughes would wipe out the family soon enough. Still, it had been so long since she had seen an aura that glowed purely from happiness. She quietly crept to the wall, pressing her ear against it to eavesdrop. She assumed he was already asleep, but instead she heard the sound of sobbing. Thinking she was imagining things, Elena shot up from her bed in shock. The future emperor who showed no emotion, the man who would one day rule the world, was crying. What should she do? Should she comfort him? But then she remembered he was only 10 years old. Elena's mind was a mess of conflicting thoughts. No, even if it feels wrong, have to stick to the plan. Do nothing. But then she thought about how he was all alone, and she was the only one who could talk to him normally. Surely it wouldn't hurt to comfort him a little. With that thought, she stepped out of her room, only to dash back in a second later. If I do something to change the original story, there could be unforeseen consequences. Besides, if I go comfort him, I'll be admitting I was eavesdropping. The next day, she had a nightmare about her conscience stabbing her. After getting dressed, she opened her door to go get breakfast, and another dramatic scene unfolded. Only this time, she didn't fall into his arms. Hughes was sitting on her windowsill staring right at her. Was he waiting for her? Yet the moment he saw her, Hughes was too proud to speak. Elena timidly greeted him. "Did you sleep well last night?" After he nodded, she started to walk away. Glancing back, she saw a colorful aura shimmering around him again. He seemed to be in a good mood. Seeing her leave on her own, Hughes silently fell into step behind her. Yesterday, he had been so intimidating that she hadn't gotten a good look. But now she realized that, having just woken up, she looked like a fluffy dandelion. They arrived at the dining hall together. As expected, it was empty. Elena was used to it. In this madhouse, even meals were hierarchical. Someone as useless as her could only eat last. The scent of tomato soup filled the air. She was about to grab a bowl when Hughes caught her arm. In noble households, servants were responsible for serving food, so he didn't understand where she was going. Elena froze for a second. Rather than explain, she decided it was better to just show him how things worked here. She served them both. The boy, however, seemed perfectly content with the bowl of tomato soup she placed before him. A pang of sympathy hit Elena. How badly must the royal family have treated him? But as she prepared to eat, she noticed the boy was just staring at her. Why wasn't he eating? Did he have a grudge against the soup? So Elena added, "Enjoy your meal." After repeating the same phrase back to her, he finally began to eat. Come to think of it, it was the same earlier. Why did he need to hear her say good morning? Was he some kind of greeting fairy? Though he did look a bit like a little elf right now, shimmering with a silvery light. He was still a young, ferocious beast who would one day retaliate against the family that hated him. Unlike her, who had just foolishly clung to them, little Hughes erupted with astonishing power, and flying debris nearly took her head off. As the legendary werewolf incarnation, he possessed a wider field of vision and animalistic instincts. To everyone else, he was a monster. Even Courtney couldn't help but mutter what a maniac he was. But the Duke was displeased. "Is this all you can show me?" How utterly pathetic. With that, he ordered his men to bring over the swordsmanship training dummies and personally demonstrated a flawless set of moves. When it was Hughes's turn, he shredded the dummies in less than a second. The Duke stepped forward. So barbaric and crude? He raised his hand and brought it down with a resounding slap. Elena collapsed to the ground, trembling all over. In her years by the Duke's side, she had witnessed so much violence that now, even just watching from a distance was terrifying. That night, her stomach rumbled. She regretted not eating dinner. Suddenly, a loud crash came from the next room, followed by sounds of pain. In the novel, the Emperor had vaguely implied that the Duke could torture Hughes as cruelly as he wished, even if it resulted in his death. At that thought, Elena leaped out of bed. The main character can't die this easily. But what if things are different now? With that fear, she rushed out of her room, telling herself, "This isn't because I feel guilty. It's because Hughes is my insurance policy." She knocked, but there was no response. If she just barged in, Hughes might hold it against her. He was extremely wary of people who were kind to him for no reason. After a moment of hesitation, she opened the door anyway. Walking to the bedside, Elena was horrified by what she saw. She covered her mouth in shock at the sight of Hughes, beaten unrecognizable by her father. Leaning closer, she could tell his breathing was shallow. When she touched his forehead, it was burning hot. With no time to think, she ran back to her room, grabbing medicine, towels, and a small bucket of water. She efficiently rolled up her sleeves and, using all her strength, turned the boy over. His body was a canvas of injuries, big and small. There wasn't a single unharmed spot. "I have to bring the fever down first." Elena gently wiped the cold sweat from his brow, careful to avoid the split in his lip, and gave him a fever-reducing medicine. Soon his temperature began to drop. Next, she applied ointment to his wounds, using the lightest touch possible to avoid causing him more pain. When she saw a tear slide down his cheek, her heart ached. Elena rested her head on the edge of the bed and gently took his hand. His crying slowly subsided. Just before dawn, she quietly returned to her room. When she opened her door, Hughes was there, sitting and waiting for her as usual. After getting the good morning he wanted, he continued to stare at her. "Why were you late today?" Elena made up an excuse. But his expression clearly showed he didn't believe her. When she asked why he was asking, Hughes suddenly looked away. "Just wondering." "Let's go eat." Elena was baffled. Did he find out? She was the prime suspect. But there was no proof. He hadn't even opened his eyes last night. His injuries had been so severe, yet today he acted as if nothing had happened. Perhaps because he was a werewolf. His healing abilities were extraordinary. After their meal, Hughes led her to the training grounds. "Wait here until I'm done." Elena was extremely annoyed, but only dared to complain in her head. She wasn't one to just obey blindly. Can I wait over there?" She really didn't want to see her father. Seeing her trembling, Hughes said, "Whatever." "Great." Elena immediately ran toward a small grove of trees and sat down with a sigh of relief. Good thing he agreed. His expression was just like the first time we met. "So what if I want to be useless? Isn't it nice to just ride shotgun in the male lead's car?" With that thought, she drifted off to sleep. A long time later, the smell of blood woke her. Hughes, covered in it, slowly reached out his hand toward her. She didn't know what to do. Was he asking her to hold his hand? After a moment's hesitation, he grabbed her hand, making her hold her breath. Noticing how pale she was and how her hand kept fidgeting, Hughes thought it was just because his own hand was cold. In reality, it was her body's instinct to run, but she couldn't tell him that. She meant to say something random, but blurted out, I want to pat your head, because you did a good job. The moment the words left her mouth, she knew they were ridiculous. But Hughes actually believed her. He knelt down, his head of white hair bowed. The unhinged boy was suddenly acting so gentle. Elena's hand trembled as she raised it to pat his head. Good job. But how long do I have to do this? My arm is getting sore. Come to think of it, the blood on him didn't seem to be his own. Hughes nonchalantly explained that the Duke had made him fight a magical beast. She didn't need to see it to imagine. What a brutal, animalistic duel it must have been. When she looked up, Hughes was staring at her again. He hesitated as if he wanted to ask something, but then his brow furrowed, and he abruptly stood up and left. It was bizarre, but at least she was free. She ran to her beloved bed. Finally, she could get some sleep. A few days later, during a sparring match, her brother Joseph attacked Hughes before the countdown even finished. Hughes managed to block the sword, but the Duke didn't stop the foul play. Joseph took advantage of the opening and his sharp sword pierced Hughes's side. Seeing Hughes on the bed writhing in agony, Elena was sick with worry. That's right, she was back again. Lifting his shirt, she saw that, although the wound was bandaged, the work was clumsy, and blood was seeping through. She knew she shouldn't be so reckless. In a few years, Hughes would kill her entire family. But even for the male lead, an infected wound could be fatal. You're supposed to get your revenge, aren't you? So you can't die like this. Just as she was about to go back to her room for more gauze, a hand shot out and grabbed her. She looked back to see Hughes awake and lucid, his eyes asking why. Sensing the approaching danger, she tried to pull her hand away, but he held it tight. It's over, I can't think of a good excuse. I have to run. But as she struggled, he accidentally pulled her down, causing her to fall right on top of him. Thankfully, she turned in time to avoid his wound. But this was way too close. Throwing caution to the wind, Elena covered his eyes with her hand and whispered, "You're just dreaming." The boy froze, then let out a soft chuckle. A colorful aura flickered around him. The excuse was absurd, but she had to commit, repeating over and over, "This is a dream you'll forget by morning." The boy kept trying to stifle his laughter, but soon he grew quiet, and his grip on her hand loosened. Even Elena couldn't believe it. He had actually fallen asleep. Am I a master hypnotist or something? For now, the crisis was averted, but he was still deathly pale. Elena applied more ointment and replaced the dirty gauze with a clean one. Once he destroyed the family, she would run away. The sooner the better, before Hughes decided to devour her too. Thankfully, she had her golden eyes that could see emotions. The moment she sensed something was wrong, she would be gone. She didn't expect things to feel wrong. Just one day later, blood was already soaking through his bandage and dripping onto the floor. Yet he greeted her as casually as ever. And the strangest part? Why was he so happy about being injured? Was he testing her? Elena quietly slowed her pace, looking for a chance to slip away, but Hughes actually waited for her. She had no choice but to follow. Hughes suddenly turned and asked, "Is there something you want to say?" The question startled Elena, and she quickly denied it, her limbs moving awkwardly. Seeing this, the boy chuckled. When they got to the dining hall, he did something unheard of. He served her soup and looked at her with expectant eyes as he said, "Enjoy your meal." Elena was confused. Why wasn't he wary of her? Did he really think last night was just a dream? Just then, the door opened, and a servant pushed in a cart. It was a delicious meal prepared by the Duke for Hughes, a sign that he had earned the Duke's approval. Looking at the steak, crispy on the outside and tender on the inside, Elena couldn't help but drool. She quickly wiped her mouth. Best to just eat her soup and go. To her surprise, Hughes passed her a piece of sliced steak. Elena stared at it, feeling that if she didn't eat it, he would just keep staring. Who was she to refuse food offered so freely? The moment it hit her tongue, her eyes lit up. This was top-tier steak. Seeing her reaction, Hughes smiled faintly. "I dreamed about you last night. Come to think of it, I don't think it was the first time. In my last dream, you held my hand." Elena broke out in a cold sweat, unsure how to respond. Glancing at the boy, she realized this was probably the longest conversation they'd ever had. After a moment of hesitation, she asked, "What was the dream about?" The boy was silent for a moment. "It was a good dream." "It's weird. It couldn't have been a good dream. Is he speaking in code?" After that, Hughes continued to feed her. Elena wrestled with her thoughts as she accepted a delicious dessert and stuffed it into her mouth with a pout. Hughes was amused by her reaction, which seemed to say, "You won't even tell me about the dream. You just keep feeding me." How could someone wear their thoughts so plainly on their face? But his answer had been genuine. Though it started as a nightmare, in the end his wish had come true. In his past, he had knowingly eaten poisoned food because he was simply too hungry. Gradually, this became his new normal. A simple life became his deepest wish. Waking up to greet someone, eating a meal that wasn't dangerous, playing and learning with kids his own age, and falling asleep peacefully at night. Hearing a simple good night would have been more than he could hope for. He had braced himself for his new life with a trembling heart, but that hope shattered the moment he met the Duke. He had merely gone from one hell to another. No matter where he was, his situation was the same. He shouldn't have gotten his hopes up. But then he met a girl. With her shimmering golden eyes, she looked more like the Duke than any of his other children. Yet she was the least like them. Her name was Elena. Many funny things happened between them. Hughes had just been trying to go to his room, but Elena thought he was stalking her. He found it amusing, so he teased her a little, and her face immediately turned red. For some reason, he felt happy in that moment and smiled to himself. He was expressionless, so Elena would never have known. But afterward, when she wished him good night with her ears bright red, his mood became complicated. It was the shock of a long-abandoned wish suddenly being fulfilled. Thinking back on the day, he realized he had been rude to her, looking into her room without permission, and saying such dismissive things. Yet she still wished him good night. Hughes felt a pang of guilt, telling himself that this one small thing made this place different from the imperial palace. As Elena ate, her brow furrowed. Just a moment ago, he had been in a good mood. Why had it suddenly turned a melancholy blue? Was it because he was kindly feeding her, and she wasn't enjoying it enough? She couldn't figure him out. She tried to take a sip of water to calm down, but drank too fast and started choking. Hughes immediately stood up, fussing over her. "Are you okay? Does something hurt?" he asked, gently patting her back. Elena waved her hands, explaining she had just drunk too quickly. Hughes couldn't understand it. But from Elena's perspective, a person who could walk around the day after being stabbed in the side was far more amazing. Hughes stared at her, then glanced at his own nearly healed wound. His recovery was due to his royal blood, but she seemed to be the weakest of all normal humans. Yet this frail girl still tried to help him. It seemed she didn't know that he remembered everything from the very beginning. There was no such thing as kindness without a reason, but she had become his one exception. He decided to tease her again. "Shouldn't you take some medicine for choking? I saw you have a lot of medicine in your room." Seeing her flustered reaction, Hughes chuckled. Before Elena could run away, he invited her to watch him train. And so there she was again. She just couldn't say no to his expectant face. But looking at him now, his frame was still so small. What would he be like when he grew up? Probably strong enough to tear people apart. Joseph's taunts came from nearby. Elena shot back without hesitation. "Why are you bothering him for no reason?" Joseph, angrily carrying a pile of firewood, retorted, "You're just here to see me being punished, aren't you?" Elena scoffed. It seemed he had been punished for breaking the sparring rules and now had to serve as an attendant. Seeing her ignore him, Joseph dropped the firewood and advanced on her. Just as he was about to strike, a chill ran down his spine. Hughes was walking toward them, longsword in hand, a hint of murder in his eyes. Joseph couldn't believe it. Is he a monster? How did he heal so fast? In his panic, he grabbed Hughes. Elena quickly covered her eyes. Hughes knew she didn't want to see a bloody scene, so he used only words as a warning. "When did I give you permission to be so disrespectful? If you have nothing to say, then get lost." Furious, Joseph raised his hand to slap him. "Enough!" the Duke's voice boomed. It was chaos. Even if it meant facing the Duke's terrifying pressure, he wanted to give her a sliver of security. The Duke demanded to know why they were fighting. Though he never once looked at his daughter, Elena couldn't stop shaking. In her eyes, the dark colors swirling around the Duke made her instinctively want to run. A while later, the Duke left with the troublemaker, and she finally breathed a sigh of relief. Hughes suddenly took her hand. "Let's go." She wanted to ask where, but she knew she had to follow him anyway, so she might as well be obedient. What was more unsettling was that, for a fleeting moment, she felt more at ease by his side. In the book, he was the great villain who would slaughter her entire family without hesitation. She knew she shouldn't get too close, but her heart didn't seem to be listening. Halfway there, Hughes turned to look at her. "Is there anywhere you want to go?" After thinking for a long time, Elena couldn't come up with a single place. Hughes clapped his hands together, a great idea striking him. "Elena, what do you usually do at this time?" The girl stammered. "I read in the library." Hearing this, Hughes started leading her toward the library. This put her in a difficult position. If she spent all day with him, she might get swept up in the storm. She made a bold decision and prepared 7 or 8 excuses. She was sure they would work. But then she saw Hughes's crestfallen expression, his brow furrowed in disappointment. He looked like a lost little wolf waiting to be taken home, and it was devastatingly cute. The boy looked up. "Can't I just wait for you outside?" Her mind screamed no, but her mouth said yes. Delighted, Hughes beamed. Then I'll wait for you right here. Seeing Elena nod with a smile, he added, You're even cuter when you smile. After closing the door, a smile spread across her face. When she realized what she was doing, she snapped back to reality. Am I really this weak to a handsome face? I surrendered without even a fight. Thinking back, he was still adorable, but she couldn't let her guard down. After all, that cute Hughes would one day destroy the entire empire. In the novel, Hughes's childhood was just a small, tragic backstory to set up his future, filled with suffering and adversity. This environment made him adept at psychological warfare, leading him to torment several fiancées and still be able to secure another engagement. One woman even tried to assassinate him, but hesitated at the last moment, unable to bring herself to mar his perfect face. When Hughes awoke, he killed her without mercy. Before she had even finished a book, Elena's gaze drifted to the door. Is he really still waiting? She was about to peek outside, when her brother's voice came from behind her. Turning, she saw him shrouded in a black aura of emotion. The more Elena backed away, the closer Joseph got. He handed her something the Duke had gifted Hughes, and told her to give it to him. But when she asked a simple question, her brother raised his hand to strike her. Elena quickly covered her head, but instead of a heavy blow, she felt a soft touch. Hughes had blocked the attack. His face flushed. He apologized guiltily. I promised I'd wait for you outside. His words struck a chord in Elena's heart. She was about to reach out and pat his head, when Hughes looked up and patted hers instead. Wait here for me, he comforted her. Then he turned and walked straight toward Joseph, who flinched and fell silent, quickly scurrying away. Hughes wasn't going to let him off that easily. If he wasn't harsh, Joseph would just bully Elena again. Hearing his frantic apologies, Hughes let out a small, chilling laugh. What good is a useless apology like that? If I broke all your limbs and then apologized, would you forgive me? Only then did Elena understand. Hughes wasn't blushing out of guilt. He was flushed because his blood was boiling with excitement. Kicked to the ground, a humiliated Joseph lunged at Hughes, who was 3 years his junior. But Hughes easily caught his wrist, and Joseph's arm began to tremble. The power disparity was so great he couldn't move. He tried to act calm and told Hughes to let go. Hughes just chuckled and threw his arm aside. How dare this weakling lay a hand on his person? A few kicks later, the library was filled with nothing but pained cries for mercy. Joseph sobbed and apologized repeatedly. If his hand was crippled, he would have no place left in the family. Hughes suddenly went quiet, his expression analytical, as if calculating the precise amount of pain to inflict without making him pass out. He turned to look at the girl. He couldn't just do things his way. He needed to know what Elena wanted. She was already scared stiff. Witnessing the male lead use his adorable face to brutally assault someone made her realize once again that this was a revenge novel. One day she could be the one to die like that. Just then, Hughes gently took her hand and touched her forehead. After confirming she didn't have a fever, he asked with concern why she was so pale. Elena quickly pulled her hand back. I was just a little startled. Hughes sighed, helpless. He slowly helped her up, slinging her arm over his shoulder, and then effortlessly lifted her onto his back. You really are too weak, he muttered. Elena hesitated for a long time, before finally relaxing and leaning against him. She ended up falling asleep. When he set her down, she bowed awkwardly, thanking him for what he'd done. Seeing the color return to her face, Hughes broke into a bright smile. But he really wanted to ask her how she wanted him to deal with Joseph. Should he go back and stomp on his wrist? Elena quickly stopped him. The punishment was enough. To protect her at all times, Hughes made a bold decision. He was going to take her with him to see the Duke. Seeing Elena hesitate, Hughes held out his hand to encourage her. He understood she was terrified of the Duke, but they had to do this. Even if she refused, he would go alone. Elena had no choice but to agree. She was curious to see what the male lead was plotting. Still, she couldn't bring herself to hate that smiling face. Just moments before, their older sister had reported the fight to their father. Upon learning that his son had been beaten so soundly, the Duke, disappointed, picked up an oil lamp and threw it at her. Courtney flinched but endured it. This was the only way to secure the position of heir. Then she heard her father say, If only Hughes were my son. I've never seen a child with such talent. I can't bring myself to get rid of him. Why must I honor the Emperor's request? The Rod family had the golden eyes, but they had always been subservient to the imperial family. The werewolf incarnation they had waited 300 years for was now essentially under their control. This was their best chance. If his daughter were to marry Hughes, as he was thinking, a maid announced that His Highness Hughes and Lady Elena were requesting an audience. and the cold-blooded Duke had finally found a use for his daughter. Otherwise, murdering Elena's real father would have been all for nothing. 10 years ago, he had locked his older brother in the underground dungeon. The man couldn't even stand, but his eyes were still sharp, which annoyed him. Still, out of respect for the time his brother had saved his life when they were 13, he had promised to always treat Lenos as a brother. They were fraternal twins. One never smiled, while the other always wore a gentle expression. A hateful glare like this was a rare sight. But today he had good news for his dear brother. Your daughter has been born. Tears streamed down Lenos's face as he thanked the gods. If it's a girl, her name will be Elena. I promise Stacy. Shu sneered. In the Rod family, no one but the heir was permitted to have children. But Lenos had fallen in love with a maid from a fallen noble family, and even broke the rules to run away with her. They were only caught because Stacy was pregnant. After capturing Lenos, Shu broke both his legs, and threatened to kill him if Stacy ran. The woman, heavily pregnant, chose to stay at the Duke's mansion. When Lenos learned of his wife's decision, he gave up trying to escape. When he heard that Stacy had given birth to a baby girl with perfect golden eyes, Shu ordered her killed. He wanted to raise Elena as his own daughter, so eliminating her real parents was the best course of action. So he made Lenos an offer. I will spare your daughter's life. If she becomes my daughter, no one will ever know she's from a branch family. But you, my brother, must die. Lenos smiled and without hesitation said, all right. Shu drew his sword and dealt with the last loose end himself. As he lay dying, Lenos, with blood in his mouth, thanked Shu with no regrets. Shu didn't understand his brother, he just thought he was a fool. In the end, Elena became his daughter. It was said that the golden eyes could not only read emotions, but also see the future of the world. However, the child he had raised was a bitter disappointment. Elena had no special abilities and no ambition. Even when Shu pushed her to the brink of death multiple times, she just let her father torment her. Now Hughes had told him that the only reward he wanted was to have Elena by his side when he studied. The Duke granted his request, satisfied. It had been 10 years since he'd killed his own brother to steal Elena, and for the first time, he felt it hadn't been a waste. That night, Elena had a strange dream. She cried for a long time in her sleep. The first step to winning over his wife was to reveal his weakness to her. I can't read, he admitted. Then immediately followed up with, will you teach me? Elena wanted to refuse, but his handsome face was just too persuasive. She swore to herself that this was the last time she would meddle in his affairs. Hughes cooed, teacher Elena. The girl's jaw dropped. What did you just call me? From now on, you'll be teaching me to read, so you shouldn't use honorifics with me, teacher. Before she could react, he was ready to start their sweet tutoring session. She quickly stopped him. This makes me uncomfortable. He looked down, dejected, successfully playing on her sympathies before looking back at her with a soulful gaze. Then how about we both drop the honorifics? If being soft didn't work, he'd be firm. You have two choices. Either I'm the only one who addresses you as teacher, or we both speak informally. Elena had to concede. All right then, Hughes, let's begin the lesson. He immediately lit up like a child. That evening, the lesson ended. As expected of the main character, he could grasp concepts after being taught just once. Elena started to wonder why he was suddenly being so nice to her. The boy's answer was simple. Because you're nice to me. Elena froze, a look of sympathy in her eyes. The next second, just as she was about to argue, Hughes told her not to pretend, because he knew everything. The girl quickly changed the subject. The tutor said, I'm not a very good teacher, but at least you... He told her it didn't matter. This lesson had only confirmed his thoughts. You taught me very seriously, which means you have ambition. If you find the right path, you can become a useful person. Because useless people die quickly. The girl felt a chill. Sure enough, even back then, Hughes was not a normal person. He handed her a book. See you tomorrow. Tucked inside was a note. Teach me to read and write tomorrow, too. His handwriting was atrocious. Back in her room, Elena's mind was racing. Based on Hughes's recent behavior, it seemed he already considered her an ally. But she had no confidence she could survive by the male lead's side. How could she make him give up on her? There was only one answer. Be completely and utterly useless. But her supposedly perfect plan only made the male lead cling to her even more. The next day, Elena invited Hughes to play house. The boy was clearly flustered, but not in the way she expected. He didn't even know what playing house was. The girl patiently explained that it was a game where kids pretended to be adults, acting out the life of an ordinary married couple. Hughes nodded. I understand, but I don't want to fight with you. He had once overheard the servants talking, and the most common topic was couples fighting. Now that he thought about it, Hughes never had a chance to get along with his own parents. Elena stood up and drew a line in the dirt with a stick. This is our house. And we are a respectful married couple. Then she pushed the boy outside. Now, you play the part of the husband who has just come home. Seeing his stiff posture, Elena smiled, satisfied. At this rate, her plan was halfway to success. Welcome home, husband. The moment she said it, Hughes's face turned beet red, and he shyly looked away. When the girl cooked a meal for her husband, he actually put the dirt in his mouth. When it was time to sleep, Elena told him to be quiet. When they woke up, the game would be over for the day. That's a shame. Playing house is fun. I want to play again tomorrow, wife. Elena's heart skipped a beat. When she had called him husband, she hadn't felt anything. It must be because this guy was destined to kill over a dozen fiancés. Hughes squeezed her hand. For some reason, this feels really nice. Elena decided to change her plan. Starting tomorrow, playing house was forbidden. As luck would have it, the next day, Hughes was summoned by the Duke. She took the opportunity to visit her second brother's room. His injuries were worse than she thought. Why do you have to pick a fight with Hughes? Do you enjoy asking for trouble? This time, she was here to hear him apologize. So, were you wrong or not? Joseph mumbled, I was wrong. Do you mean it? Her brother turned away petulantly. Even if I'm sincere, you won't forgive me anyway. Why wouldn't I forgive you? You've already been punished. Really? If I sincerely apologize, you'll forgive me and spare my wrist? The girl who appeared calm on the outside was actually startled. She had always thought of him as a little demon, but seeing him so terrified, she suddenly realized he was just a kid. If his apology was sincere, she would forgive him. Hearing this, her brother cried even harder. Was he that afraid of Hughes breaking his hand? It made sense. If he were crippled, their father would be the first to cast him aside. Her brother sniffled. You're not getting anything out of this, but you're still helping me. You're such an idiot. Elena punched him. You seem to have misunderstood. I'm forgiving you for my own sake, not yours. She despised her brother, but she couldn't just let his life be ruined. Anyway, be more careful from now on. I won't be so lenient next time, got it? Joseph nodded. I'm sorry, Elena. His second apology at least sounded a little more sincere. Afterward, the girl went to the little house where she was supposed to meet Hughes. Hearing her voice, Hughes immediately looked up. He had been practicing his writing while he waited. Come and read this. Elena was puzzled. Why had he misspelled his own name? She had to show him the correct way. But that's strange. You can write much harder words perfectly. Are you doing this on purpose? Hughes freely admitted it. He wanted to see her write his name. Through her golden eyes, Elena could see that Hughes was feeling incredibly happy. The boy suddenly leaned in close, and a second later kissed her on the cheek. Elena froze. So what are we playing today? I still want to play house. His casual demeanor only made her more nervous. She repeated to herself, stay calm. Stick to the plan. How about we watch ants today, she suggested, trying to convince him it would be fun, all the while thinking, this time, he'll definitely be bored. They started following a line of ants until they reached the anthill. Suddenly, the girl realized something was wrong. Why was she having so much fun? Hughes was also enjoying it. At this rate, her plan was going to fail again. She quickly changed the subject. Father called you over this morning. What was it about? The tutor said he has to go to the capital and wanted me to see him off. He watched her expression carefully, afraid she would be upset. But Elena had no desire to go. Anyway, she had successfully changed the topic. The game was over. Are you going back so soon? He seemed extra clingy today, which made it hard to be firm. Let's play again tomorrow. The two walked into the forest, where something was glinting in a tree. She went closer to investigate, reaching her hand inside a hollow. After fumbling around, she pulled out a necklace. Someone must have hidden it there. She opened the locket. The picture inside was of a woman who looked exactly like her. Her name was Stacy. A memory sparked in the girl's mind. She started running toward the temple, her heart pounding faster the closer she got. They arrived at a gravestone. Stacy was her mother. She'd heard that her mother had died of a fever right after giving birth to her. The current Duke's official wife had passed away shortly after having her sixth son, which was why everyone called Elena an illegitimate child. The maids spread rumors freely, but they all disappeared without a trace soon after. So the rumors were all she knew about her mother. Elena had once asked her father if her mother had any other family, but he had told her she was an orphan. But the name in the locket included a surname. An orphan wouldn't have a surname. Hughes thought the woman must be her mother. You two look very similar, especially your round face. Elena blushed. She tried to calm her racing heart. You're right, this is my mother. I can feel it. Seeing her happy smile, he couldn't help but smile too. Elena squeezed his hand. One day when I leave this place, I'll go find my mother's family. But I can't yet, because the Duke hasn't given up on my golden eyes. Hughes looked at her seriously. Then I'll help you leave. Elena was stunned for a long moment, her eyes welling up. It was strange. She had been so determined to get away from him, but now, being this close, she felt completely at ease. A few days later, the Duke returned and immediately summoned all the children, specifically calling for Hughes and Elena. Formal lessons will begin tomorrow. The two of you will come and pay your respects to me together. In the past, her father's expression was always filled with disgust when he looked at her, but just now she couldn't see anything. Was it her imagination? The Duke then dismissed everyone but Elena, even telling Hughes to leave. Elena didn't dare to look up at him. They hadn't spoken in a long time. Her father's voice was suddenly gentle. My poor child. From now on, I will give you all the love you deserve. Move back into the main building. She felt no gratitude toward the Duke. Instead, she hoped the male lead would hurry up and destroy the family. The girl pushed the thoughts away and ran next door. The moment she saw Hughes, the gloom on her face vanished. She trotted to the table, took the milk he offered, and sat down to enjoy it. Hughes watched her, unblinking, and complimented her dress, saying she looked so cute. He wanted to hug her tight and ruffle her hair. He was so lost in thought that he didn't hear Elena call his name several times. Starting tomorrow, we have lessons together. I was asking if you're worried. Hughes was just excited to have class with her. The girl let go of her worries. After all, the world would unfold according to the male lead's will. Seeing her yawn several times, Hughes suggested, "Why don't we just sleep here together tonight? I just figured you wouldn't want to go back to that room." Elena rubbed her eyes. It was too quiet there, she didn't like it. They decided to have a camping game and made pallets on the floor. Elena found herself looking forward to what a real night sky would look like on a camping trip. Hughes looked over at her. "Let's go real camping tomorrow." The girl agreed, and they both looked forward to the next day. In that moment, Elena had a strange feeling that all her plans were unnecessary. Hughes wouldn't abandon her just because she was useless. 4 years later, the girl had grown into a beautiful, graceful young woman. She turned down her second brother's invitation because she had a date with Hughes. The pet male lead she had raised was finally growing up. Years of understanding had allowed them to find their footing in this deranged family. Without a word, Hughes knew what she was thinking. Elena happily ate her ice cream. If she had known it was her favorite wasabi flavor, she would have run faster. Hughes asked what the Duke had said to her. The girl said it was nothing. Since the Duke's sudden change of heart, she had finally started living the life a Duke's daughter should. All she had to do was ask, and the Duke would do anything for her. The years he had abandoned her might as well have never happened. One day, he even told her she was the only child he truly cherished. Though he looked regretful, the emotion her golden eyes saw was pure annoyance. But she didn't care. Her father had never shown any remorse, never even apologized. He just showered her with material things and occasionally said something manipulative. The private meals with the Duke that her siblings coveted were just torturous for her. The only thing that could comfort her at times like these was the ice cream Hughes prepared for her. To her surprise, the boy got angry, pouting and sulking. Elena linked her arm with his. The old Hughes would have asked her what was wrong with a cute expression. But now he was a rebellious teenager. Thinking about it, he really had grown up. His features were already showing signs of becoming a devastatingly handsome man. He was so much taller too, even though they ate the same things. The girl suddenly realized, "Have you gotten taller again? Let's go measure." She was a whole head shorter than him now. When they first met, he had been much smaller. And back then, something major had happened that almost got them both killed. She would never forget that day. Hughes tried to comfort her. "I don't feel like I've gotten any taller." Elena thought it was a shame. She wanted to see the cute little Hughes for a while longer. During snack time, Hughes noticed something was off. He had never seen the maid before. The woman curtsied, explaining she was a maid who had come to the mansion with the new tutor. He didn't think much of it. Just as he reached for a snack, Elena slapped his hand away. "Don't, you can't eat that." Hughes reacted instantly. Elena had blindly helped him again. But there was a strong sense of hostility coming from the maid, a simmering danger. She might have been sent by the Emperor to kill Hughes. The thought made her act instinctively. Hughes was used to this. He suggested they stay put. If they left now, it would look suspicious. Then he stared at her intently. "Elena, we're on the same team, right?" "Of course," she said with a small smile. "Trust me, Elena, I will never let any harm come to my people." The girl froze for a second, then nodded repeatedly. She tried to recall the original plot, but the story of the male lead's childhood was only a small part of the beginning. She only remembered that Hughes was almost assassinated more than once. "Elena, can you let go of my arm?" The girl scrambled backward. In the novel and in reality, there was one crucial difference now. He had her, a liability, by his side. Hughes told her to hide a few of the cookies to make it look like they had eaten some. Elena nodded obediently. The least she could do was not get in his way. Soon Hughes found 2 large dolls, placed them on the sofa, and covered them with a blanket to create decoys. Then the 2 of them hid in the wardrobe. He told her not to move and that he would find a chance to run out. She was not to make a sound until he called for her. After what felt like an eternity, an assassin walked right in, a knife hidden behind his back. When he pulled back the blanket and found 2 dolls, he realized he'd been tricked. Hughes uttered a spell, and the entire room was plunged into darkness. Elena couldn't see anything. A green aura of murderous intent crept across the floor toward her, and there were 2 of them. She could clearly distinguish the 2 sources of power. A strange thought popped into her head. What if I just stomp on it? She wanted to do something to help. She stomped her foot, and the smoke instantly vanished. The sounds outside grew quieter. She carefully peeked out, only to come face to face with Hughes. Elena jumped, scratching her head awkwardly. Hughes was startled too, stammering his words. Everything in the room was smashed, but the assassins were nowhere to be seen. Hughes told her the assassins fell out the window and were probably dead, but her golden eyes couldn't be fooled by emotions. Why was he lying? The blood on the floor wasn't from a fall. Hughes covered his ears, looking frightened. I saw the assassins were distracted, so I closed my eyes and pushed them. They smashed all the tables when they were swinging their daggers around. It's all their fault for being so violent. Elena didn't understand, but she took his hand and praised him. You did the right thing. It was a strange and terrifying scene. A child so young had killed people and cleaned up the evidence so perfectly, but no one had the right to blame him. Hughes, thank you for protecting me. You must have been scared too, right? The boy lowered his head and hugged her tightly. Yeah, I was terrified. Elena, I wish you... No, it's nothing. He swallowed the words he was about to say. How scared must he have been to act like that? Still, he was kind of cute at that moment. Elena hugged him back. Are you still upset about earlier? Hughes pulled his arm away. Don't get so close. Lately, he always kept his distance from her. If I had known it would be like this, I would have hugged the elf like little Hughes more often. If you keep being so cold to me, I'm really going to leave. Unexpectedly, he replied, do whatever you want. The girl started to feel sad and turned to leave in a huff. Hearing her footsteps recede until the door slammed shut, Hughes let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. His face red to the tips of his ears. This was driving him crazy. He knew he was being stupid. But every time Elena did something like that, it drove him wild. Like there was something wrong with his heart. Why was he like this? He didn't want to admit it, because this kind of feeling would never be returned. It was infuriating, but it was the truth. He wished he had been a little slower, a little less aware. Maybe he started to realize his feelings the day the Duke gave him that special mission. From his first year in the Duke's mansion, he had participated in monster-slaying expeditions. He later received a simple mission, the only special thing about it being Elena's participation. The girl put on his clothes and happily dragged him outside. Hughes felt strange, a subtle shift. She had said she wanted to wear something easy to move in, so he had just lent her some old clothes he couldn't wear anymore. He hadn't felt anything then, but seeing her in his clothes, why couldn't he look away? The girl hugged his arm. I don't know how long it's been since I've been outside. Hughes was still trying to deceive himself. This fluttery feeling was probably just from being infected by her happiness. But it was strange. Why had the Duke forbidden Elena from going out? It seemed even she didn't know the reason. When Hughes had offered to take her, the Duke had agreed surprisingly quickly. What was that meticulous man planning? But seeing Elena so happy, he decided it would be fine. The moment they mounted their horses, the guards all stared at the young lady, seeing the Duke's favored daughter for the first time. Hearing Elena laughing and joking with another man, Hughes felt an irrational annoyance. He couldn't help but warn a fellow knight, we're not here to play around. But he turned to the girl with a gentle voice. I'll catch a rabbit for you later. Hughes sighed to himself. They looked like they were on a picnic, but it didn't matter. At least this would be a wonderful memory for Elena. But the sunny weather suddenly turned, and it started to hail. In such bad weather, even though he didn't want to see her disappointed, he had to send her back for her own safety. No monsters had appeared in this area for decades, so Elena should be safe. One guard should be enough for her. Just then he sensed a strange movement in the distance. Hughes ordered the soldiers to spread out and told Elena to come to him. Elena dismounted and casually sat in front of him on his horse. Have our sizes changed this much already? Hughes could wrap one arm around her slender waist. He tried to concentrate, zeroing in on the movement. In that instant, his golden eyes faintly glowed. Now, countless vines erupted from the ground. Hughes yanked on the reins. telling the girl to hold on tight. He had to find the monster's weak spot and take it out with one throw of his sword. It wasn't difficult, but to grab his sword, he'd have to either let go of the reins or the arm holding the girl. If he let go of the reins, they might both be thrown from the horse. He had one chance. He had to kill it in one shot. But when he saw Elena let go of the reins, Hughes froze. Had he checked? Was she holding on properly? The next second, they were both tumbling down a slope. Hughes held the girl tightly, using his own body as a cushion, as they disappeared from view. His consciousness faded. He didn't know how much time had passed. But Hughes woke up first. The first thing he did was look at the girl in his arms. "Elena, wake up!" At his urgent calls, the girl groggily sat up. "I'm fine." He was overcome with guilt and self-blame. Elena was already so timid she must have been terrified. He had wanted to give her a perfect, happy day. But the girl smiled brightly. "You must look ridiculous right now," she said, standing up and dusting herself off. Hughes was confused. Why was she acting so nonchalant? They had just nearly died. "Are you sure you're okay? If you don't feel well, just tell me." He hadn't expected Elena's trust in him to be so absolute. "With you by my side, what do I have to worry about? Come on, take my hand. Let's find a place to get out of the rain." "Yeah, okay." They found shelter under a tree. Hughes glanced at the girl. "You're really not hurt?" She waved her hand. "Not even a scratch." It looked like they would be spending the night here. The girl said, "We're in trouble." But her expression wasn't worried at all. He was happy to be trusted like this. "But when we look back on this long after, this hardship will be a memory, right?" Strangely, the girl didn't answer him. "Elena, don't you think so?" The girl scratched her head awkwardly. "That's true. But for something to be a memory, you have to remember it." Hughes noticed she always excluded herself when talking about the future, as if she wouldn't be in it. But the future Hughes imagined was filled with Elena. The girl always treated him like someone who would leave one day. "This is our first time spending the night outside together. How could I possibly forget?" The girl suddenly realized, "You're right. This is my first time sleeping outside." Hughes' anger instantly vanished. He had no reason to be mad. He just told her awkwardly, "Anyway, you better remember it because I definitely won't forget." Elena giggled. "If we don't freeze to death here, that is." Only then did Hughes notice. He quickly cupped her face. Her lips were purple, and her body was ice cold. She was starting to get sleepy. A sense of dread washed over Hughes. He pulled her shoulder, making her lean against him for warmth. His own body temperature hadn't dropped, thanks to his divine bloodline. But as the night grew colder, the girl's temperature showed no signs of rising. Her body temperature dropped to a freezing point, so he had no choice but to use his own body to warm her. They had hugged countless times since they were kids, but for some reason his heart was now pounding uncontrollably. He held her tighter, but his heart only beat faster. He was even worried. The sound would wake her up. It was just sharing some body heat, nothing major. He spent the whole night on edge. An accidental glance made him realize that his feelings had changed, that they could no longer be as pure as before. The tighter he held her, the more his heart raced with joy. It was ridiculous. He knew the future Elena envisioned had no place for him, yet he couldn't help but fall for her. It was like meeting his first love and getting rejected on the spot. No wonder he had started to hesitate before hugging her. Thinking about it now, maybe falling in love with Elena was inevitable. Since coming to this twisted family, Elena had been his one and only. He had been willing to give her everything, and apparently that included his heart. "Elena, what am I going to do with you?" In truth, he already knew the answer. Elena had to accept him. But how could he make that happen? The next day, after returning home, the girl came down with a bad cold, and Hughes seemed to have caught a fever as well. This surprised Elena. After they recovered, Hughes's personality changed completely. He became cold and distant. When Elena reached out to reconcile, he ignored her. Thinking back, his emotions had been off for a while. Her golden eyes could read anyone's feelings, but for months she hadn't been able to decipher Hughes's. She couldn't understand what his emotions meant. Ever since they spent the night in the wild, Hughes had been acting strange. His emotions used to be pure and clear, but after that night, they had become muddled with gloomy colors, anxiety, worry, tension, all negative feelings. Did Hughes now find her annoying? She had thought he still liked her, even just a little. But now it seemed she was no longer his one and only. Why had things changed? After months of pondering, she came to one conclusion. Hughes was going through puberty. That would explain it. The symptoms of puberty were turmoil and confusion. Looking closely at his emotional fluctuations, most of them were still happy colors. So they were just on different paths for a while. In time, our relationship will definitely go back to how it was. Today, Hughes had prepared ice cream for her as usual. and she had been too busy eating to respond properly. The more she thought about it, the more she felt it was her fault. Why was she, a grown woman on the inside, acting like a child with him? She didn't want a rift to form between them over something so small. Not because he was the male lead who would one day destroy her family, but because he was her childhood friend and the only person she truly cherished. Even though they would have to part ways someday, there was no need to start drifting apart so soon. Elena went to Hughes's room. He was there, but he seemed to be asleep. She tiptoed inside. "Are you asleep?" Hughes answered with his eyes closed. "Yes." Elena rushed over and flopped down beside him. They looked at each other for a second, then both burst out laughing. Hughes apologized first. The girl immediately frowned. "I was going to apologize first. You stole my chance, now I'm mad." Hughes apologized again, indulgently. The girl hugged him, chattering in his ear. Hughes wasn't really listening. He was too aware of how close they were. When the girl suddenly looked up at him, he felt even more embarrassed. Elena saw the complex emotions through her golden eyes and tactfully rolled over. "He's a teenage boy. I have to be careful." "You forgot to tell me something," the girl suddenly remembered. Her father had said there would be a test soon. Although Hughes wasn't a candidate for the rod succession, her father was making him take it to test his limits. Elena's heart ached for him. This event was meant to embellish Hughes's future, but for him it was a cruel fate. "I don't want to do it, but I can't just not do it because I don't want to," Hughes muttered. "I'll have to face things much harder than this in the future. I have to overcome this." Elena knew what Hughes meant. He had said that one day he would reclaim his rightful place, which included getting revenge on his half-brother. It was just his nature. When he wanted something, he had to have it. Hughes wasn't ready to tell her about it yet. Elena chuckled. "In this world, no one knows you better than I do." Little did she know, the boy was thinking about how to win her over. "Elena, why are you moving so far away?" Before the girl could react, Hughes grabbed her wrist. With a soft thud, they were both lying down. "Why have you been pulling away from me? Stay by my side." The villainess was lying in the same bed with him, but the male lead was pretending to be asleep. The girl snuggled into his arms, reminiscing about when they were little. Hughes had been just like this. "When I grow up, I want to be with you like this every day." Elena was completely charmed by his cuteness. She didn't know when, but he had become her most beloved person. Lying shoulder to shoulder with the male lead who would one day kill her, the girl was no longer afraid of him. Instead, she was more afraid of him leaving her. Yes, when that time came, she wouldn't be able to see him even if she wanted to. She had to get a good look at him now. Today, Hughes seemed especially radiant, perhaps because of the sunlight on his silver hair. Hughes suddenly spoke. "Do you like my face that much?" Startled, the girl shot up, shyly looking away. Hughes smiled indulgently. "You've been admiring my face this whole time, haven't you?" Hot, Elena's face turned beet red. They bickered back and forth, until Elena turned away in a huff. Hughes knew very well that Elena had been obsessed with his face since they were children. He had overheard her calling him cute many times, and she still often stared at him. It was a relief. It meant he had successfully grown up to be the type she liked. "Elena, about that test you mentioned. If I pass it, will you grant me one wish?" The girl was confused. Why the sudden talk about a wish? Hughes said it was related to her. The girl looked at him intently. She had to think carefully before answering. She tentatively asked what he wanted. "It wouldn't be fun if I told you now." "Don't worry, I won't ask for anything unreasonable." The girl had a bad feeling, but she felt guilty refusing. Not only was Hughes surrounded by a happy aura, but there was also a desperate glow around him. "I just think I'll work harder on the test if I have a reward. Is that not okay?" He looked as if her reward meant more to him than anything the Duke could offer. The girl finally gave in. Hughes's eyes lit up. "Really? Then it's a promise." The girl hadn't expected him to be so happy. She definitely hadn't agreed just because his handsome face was begging her. "But you're really not going to tell me what the wish is?" Hughes said cryptically. "It's a secret for now." With only 7 days until the test, the Duke ordered all the candidates to change their daily routines. But he made no such demands on Elena. Everyone speculated that Elena would be excluded from the test, because she was the Duke's doted-on daughter. But even a lifetime of such treatment wouldn't make her feel comfortable. Just then, her brother appeared. "What are you doing standing there all alone?" Elena immediately stood up to leave, but her brother stopped her forcefully. The girl was speechless. "The succession test is in less than a week. How do you have time to be here?" Joseph found her formal tone grating. "You should call me brother." He had treated her so badly, yet she wasn't even angry. Was he really not here to cause trouble this time? "So what are you doing here?" Seeing that Elena wouldn't call him brother, he scratched his head in frustration. "I came today to be a brother to you for once." He ordered the maid to leave. and patted the seat next to him, motioning for her to sit. Anyone who didn't know them would think they were the friendliest of siblings. For the next week, do not do anything to attract attention. The girl sensed he wasn't as dangerous as before. It actually sounded like a genuine warning. Joseph stressed, and don't get too close to Hughes. The girl didn't understand, but her brother just told her, just listen to your brother. Be especially careful around Courtney. Starting today, avoid her no matter what. Repeat after me. The girl knew better than anyone how much her sister Courtney hated her. Her circumstances had changed so drastically that her siblings, competing for the succession, were surely resentful of their father's unfairness. But between the two of them, Joseph was easier to deal with. He was openly jealous of their father's sudden favoritism, but didn't seem to hate her for it. Seeing his sister lost in thought, he raised his voice. Are you even listening to me? Say yes. Elena found it strange. Why are you suddenly being so nice and warning me? Could it be that deep down you actually care about your little sister? Joseph stammered, denying it. Absolutely not! He was trying to be proud, but the shy aura around him gave him away. After Elena had forgiven him, he had started seeking her out from time to time. If you keep talking nonsense, I'm leaving, the girl giggled. Wait, brother, don't be like that. Why do I have to avoid Hughes too? Her brother hesitated, thinking for a long time before speaking. Courtney really dislikes you being close to Hughes. But the girl's golden eyes saw that he was lying, that he was hiding the real reason. If she pressed him further, he might actually leave, so she decided to drop it. In the Empire, one could formally inherit a family at the age of 20, but Courtney had yet to receive her father's approval. The Duke's special treatment of Elena at a time like this only made her sister resent her more. Seeing her sister's worried expression, Joseph asked what she planned to do. The girl decided to stick to her plan and avoid her sister for the next week. It was humiliating, but it was the smartest choice for now. The Duke had forbidden her from learning any skills, so she never had a chance to learn swordsmanship or build up a tolerance to poison. But the girl had no intention of staying away from Hughes. Completely ignoring her brother's warnings, Joseph sighed. I warned you to stay away from Hughes. Just as he finished speaking, the person in question appeared behind him. A murderous intent instantly filled the air, scaring the siblings out of their wits. Her brother shot up, denying everything, but his grip on her only tightened. Joseph was on the verge of tears. Elena had to intervene, gently moving her childhood friend's hand. How about we let go and talk this out? Hughes stared at the girl for a long moment, then shifted his gaze to Joseph and let out a contemptuous laugh. Let's talk. He said it calmly, but the atmosphere was thick with menace. Elena pulled his hand. Sit down first. Hughes lost his temper and obediently sat down. Her brother, still standing, hesitated. I hope you have a pleasant time. Before the male lead could react, he bolted. Seeing Hughes about to give chase, the girl tackled him. I don't care anymore, I'll handle this, you just go. Her brother hesitated again. Seeing this, the girl told him, if you're grateful, then don't get into trouble during the test. Come back safe. I'll beat everyone and come back in glory, he shouted before running off. With a foolish brother like that, she was the one who had to suffer. But there were more pressing matters. Hughes was pinned beneath her. She immediately scrambled off, apologizing, completely missing the blush on his face. She started rambling, trying to explain that she, like her brother, didn't want him to leave. To her surprise, Hughes suddenly stood up, covering his red face, and stammered, I get it, we'll talk later. Then he turned and strode away. Elena was surprised. It was so abrupt she didn't even have a chance to stop him. But the color of his emotions didn't seem like anger. It was more like embarrassment. The girl sighed. Even though she could see emotions, she couldn't understand them. Teenage boys were so complicated. As a result, she didn't see Hughes all day. In the morning, he said he had no appetite. During class, he said he was going to train. By noon, he had already eaten and left. He must be avoiding her because of what happened yesterday. Well, two could play at that game. She shouted his name down the hallway and happened to run into her brother, who urged her to go back to her room to avoid Courtney. Having no other choice, the girl headed back. As she looked up, she saw someone standing in front of her door. The male lead hid all day, only showing himself at night. The girl was about to lose her mind. How could she stay mad when she saw that face? The sight of his drooping ears made her even more flustered. Hughes looked down and apologized softly. I didn't know how to face you, so I had to hide. But I thought about it, and I know what I did was wrong. He couldn't look her in the eye, making the atmosphere awkward. Elena sighed. I don't know what you did to wrong me, but the fact that you came to me on your own is all that matters. For me, the worst thing is you avoiding me. Her unconditional forgiveness made Hughes feel even more ashamed. Her golden eyes caught this momentary flicker of emotion. Even though she could read everyone's feelings, she was the only one who didn't understand Hughes's love. When they looked at each other, he seemed to have something to say, but he just said quietly, "It's nothing, really." The girl couldn't believe it. She had seen that huge emotional surge. Yet he was lying without even blinking. The old Hughes would have looked at her with anxious, uncertain eyes. When did he become such a good actor? The girl leaned in close. "Are you perhaps upset with me about something?" Hughes reached out and ruffled her hair. "How could I be upset with you? You're so good." Her hair was a mess, but the tension had eased. As the girl fixed her hair, she grumbled, "You old fox, trying to get away with it like that. I'll let you off just this once." Hughes suddenly remarked, "You're so clever and resourceful sometimes, and other times you're like a child. They say the people of the Rod family are good at reading others. Are you like that too?" The smile on the girl's face froze. She had never told anyone that she could read emotions. People were usually repulsed by it, and she was afraid that if Hughes knew the truth, he would hate her too. As she was lost in thought, Hughes interrupted her. "Sorry, I misspoke. You're not like a Rod at all." The girl chuckled and poked him. "I'm not mad. Don't worry about it. But if you still feel bad, then when you're ready, you can secretly tell me what you did wrong." Just then, there was a knock on the door. The butler had come with a message. She thought the Duke wanted to see Hughes, but it was Elena he had summoned. Coincidentally, her brother was also waiting outside the office. The emotions seeping through the crack in the door were full of rage and intensity. She had a very bad feeling. Just then, her older sister threw the door open. "You two, get in here now!" Was now being allowed by their cold-blooded father to participate. "If you don't achieve results within a week, you will remain there forever." The man observed his 3 children through his golden eyes. Their reactions were all different. One was confused, one was furious, and one, though her emotions were unreadable, was clearly terrified. For Elena, this was nothing short of a death sentence. Seeing the fear in his youngest daughter, the father smiled, satisfied. The one who achieves the best results in this test will be granted the position of heir. The moment their father left, Courtney cornered her against the wall, her hands pressing down on her shoulders so hard she couldn't move. She tried to push her away, but it only enraged her sister more. "Everyone says father wants to give you the position of heir. Why do you keep acting so confused?" She had thought that if she just endured this year, the position of heir would be hers. She could tolerate their father's favoritism toward Elena. All she wanted was the power to crush everyone else. But now everyone was whispering that the Duke might give the entire family to Elena. Their father's silence on the matter only fueled the rumor. She told herself not to worry, but what if it was true? What if Elena already knew the outcome and was deliberately spreading these rumors? She demanded to know if this was the case, and the girl vehemently shook her head. The difference in their strength and size was too great. She could barely breathe. The tears welling in her eyes only made Courtney angrier. "Since you were little, you've clung to Hughes like a parasite, and now you're finally reaping the benefits. Elena, who was nothing, now has a chance to compete for the highest position in the Rod family, all because Hughes took an interest in her. I should have been the one to claim that position first. It would have been so easy back then. Compared to Elena, I'm not lacking in any way. I was just too slow to see Hughes's true value. If it weren't for Elena, yes, if you didn't exist, that position would have been mine."